thanks everybody for joining again on another outstanding edition of our podcast, Inside Scoop. And today's Inside Scoop is with Flock Safety. And I'm so interested in this company and what you guys do because ORC investigations, as you both know, are like a puzzle. So we're going to talk about how to put this puzzle together today a little bit. But first, before we drive into that and dive into that, I'm going to talk with Rich McElwain and Mike Combs, and I want them to introduce themselves and talk to us a little bit about what you all do. Rich, do you want to kick it off?
Yeah, for sure. Thanks for having us. And so kind of my piece of the puzzle here is I work for Flock. I've been here a little over 3 years. Prior to working for Flock, I worked for a county police department right outside the Metro Atlanta area. And I was an early user of Flock, so former user, former customer, now current employee. And kind of my piece of the conversation is trying to understand what some of the problems are with some of our customers, and then building a strategy and putting cameras in a place that's going to help solve that.
Awesome. Thanks, Rich. And Mike, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Hey, thanks for having me, Stephanie. Mike Combs. I've had a 30-year career in retail AP, and I retired last summer after 16 years at Home Depot leading the organized retail crime team. And I'm now in the retail crime consulting space, helping technologies like Flock Safety really get a robust footprint into the retail space.
Awesome. So, we all sat together on a webinar a little bit earlier, I don't know, it was last year actually, before the new year. And so we heard a little bit about Flock Safety, but I want to get you guys together and just have a little bit more of a conversation about what Flock Safety does. So pretend I'm a newbie LP person who has no clue about Flock Safety, and just give me the 30-second pitch on what Flock Safety does. If anybody wants to take that.
Yeah, so at a real high level, for our typical just retailer out of the box, our cameras go at the entry points of the parking lot. We put them on our own pole. We can also put them on a light pole or any kind of pre-existing pole in the parking lot. But the goal is to capture traffic coming inbound most often. And the camera it's a motion activated camera. So the benefit to that is it doesn't require a live power access point all the time. We can run on solar, and it uploads everything to the cloud through cellular. And so we're not trenching power or trenching data lines. It's all kind of a self-sufficient device, plus a solar panel, of course, but it's on a single pole. And we put, depending on how the parking lot is set up and what the budget is, we put a couple to maybe 3 or 4 cameras around the retailer. And then with the inbound traffic, you can get a number of different alerts. So if you have that former terminated employee who made some threats to come back and commit violence, you can put their vehicle onto a custom hot list and be alerted when they come back. Outside of that, if you've got these rings that are running around committing all kinds of crime, you can clearly identify one of their vehicles either through a witness or your live video on the outside of the building. You pick out what vehicle they're in, and then go back to our nearest camera and you pick up the license plate. And again, you put that onto a custom hot list. We like to target a whole a series of stores together, a series of retailers and kind of a corridor. That way, if you get hit at store 1 and your suspects are moving to store 2, you've now used the evidence from store 1 to notify store 2 they're coming, and you can be more proactive on the front end when they arrive. And based on your policy or what it is, maybe the manager meets them at the door and says, "Hey, can I help you?" Maybe they just turn them away. So a lot of different options depending on what the store's policy is.
Awesome. Mike, anything that?
Yeah, I think one of the things I'm really excited, there's a lot of exciting things about Flock Safety and license plate reader technology and integrating that into your day-to-day life in retail. But I'm really excited because for my 30 years, we had a lot of metrics that we measured, apprehensions, dollars, investigations closed, all these things. And we just kind of went after everything we could get our hands on. We tried to investigate and apprehend. This tool not only allows you to be more efficient and more productive because you've got this data that you can use on real life car descriptions and vehicles, but also I can now identify repeat offenders or habitual criminals and go after them as my top priority. And if you think about that, with increase in shrink, increase in crime, we're not all getting more resources to fight that battle. Tools like this allow us to go after the worst of the worst offenders, which is good for the police. It's good for my return on investment. It's good for my shareholder. And at the end of the day, I think we're finding out that some of the world-class retailers are finding out that the criminals that cause the most amount of damage to them is a small number of criminals.
Right.
And the old school of LP, we would just kind of catch as many people as we can. And I think we've got to rethink that strategy.
Yeah, it's the old 80-20 rule, right? I think it's still very much in effect, maybe even a little bit more skewed on that percentages, but I agree with you. So, I go to a lot of meetings and we talk about ORC, and I'm at meetings with law enforcement and so forth. And I continue to hear from them, retailers got to get us better video, right? Retailers don't have enough cameras. There's not enough information. So I think that's part of our ORC puzzle, right? What are you hearing from law enforcement as far as working together with Flock Safety?
It's definitely one of the side benefits of working and installing this technology from a retailer perspective is I now have that data point and that physical evidence, and you won't get that question from the police department again. It might be a different police department that questions that until they realize what technology you have. But it is so integrated. Flock is so integrated into the law enforcement community. When they find out that you can piece together this type of data along with your own camera systems, that goes away. And the other side benefit is this new collaboration starts. So when you call them on a fraud case or a safety incident, you've got all this new collaboration that you built because they know you're serious about fighting crime.
So do you guys have an outreach team that works with law enforcement, sort of helps develop those relationships on that side?
So, yeah, so I mean, from a Flock standpoint, we have a few different verticals, and so we've got a team that focuses just on law enforcement, a team that focuses on your HOAs, apartment complexes, things of that nature, and then we have the commercial and schools. And so, kind of the idea is everybody has to have, kind of chip in on making the entire community safe, right?
Mm-hmm.
And there's the opportunity to share those cameras. And this is a common conversation with every customer, but there's a point where you can share the cameras and the data you're receiving with local law enforcement. And so if you were to have a stolen vehicle or a missing person, Amber Alert, things of that nature, hold on to your property, the local police department can get that alert in real time. And you can actually, again, on the sharing information side, that creates a better relationship with your local police department. They know the technology, they're familiar with it. We are the largest vendor in the country at this point, collecting over 2 billion images per week nationwide. And so we have so many agencies that are using our cameras that when you call and say, hey, we have a flock hit, they just naturally know what that means. It's a common term, and of course when that goes to the court system, they're familiar with it. They've seen our images. They know how it works. And I think to Mike's point earlier, when a lot of the way that the cases used to be built was here was one suspect at one store committing this one offense, and then it went to court, and of course the court system is overwhelmed, and the person gets probation, and they come out and they do it again. And with the network of cameras that are set up today, it's not just one person committing one crime at one store. It's this person committed the same crime at 10 different stores. Here's the evidence to show everything tied together. And when it gets to the court system, they're much more likely to get real time instead of probation.
Yeah, I think the aggregation of cases is huge. I know that there's a lot of legislation in progress too that should try and help that along, but I think that's a great point. How does the retailer know, or what's their thought process for what they can and can't share? And I know retailers would love to share everything, right? But I'm sure there's always constraints around that. So what have you seen from retailers as far as that goes?
Yeah. So some retailers don't want to share data. They would rather have law enforcement reach out and send in a formal request.
Mm-hmm.
Can you search your cameras for this date at this time for this type of vehicle? And so the sharing can occur that way. Otherwise, through our platform, we can set it up where you can send those stolen cars and wanted people alerts straight to the police department, or you can give them the access to search that information afterwards. So they wouldn't get it in real time, but they can search. I wanted to see if there was a red Honda Accord that pulled onto their property. That vehicle committed a crime across the street. I wanted to see if they went onto their property immediately afterwards. And so there's a couple different ways that the information can be shared back and forth.
So you're saying that law enforcement can actually access their system and do a search after the fact?
If they want to share that data,
Oh, wow.
the data, yeah. So the data belongs to the retailer, and if the retailer decides to share that data with law enforcement, they would share it with the law enforcement agency that would respond to that specific store location if they were to call 911.
Wow, that's pretty cool. And I know law enforcement is just begging for stuff like that. And it's great that this is finally available to them. Is there a way for the retailers, or I'm sure there is a way, but are the retailers sharing information at all among themselves? I know you can't name company names, but any of that happening where they're working cases
Yeah.
together?
Yeah, so there is a option currently where essentially if I work at one retailer and I have a vehicle of interest and I put that onto a custom hot list, Mike works at a different retailer. He puts that same vehicle onto a custom hot list. It'll tell us, hey, retailer A and retailer B both have an interest in this vehicle. It gives you a point of contact at that retailer to reach out to, and then you can figure out what they have in their case. And it obviously doesn't expose any details about the case. Maybe it's something more confidential you don't want to release, but at least gives you a contact to reach out to and follow up on the case.
Right.
And I think that's common collaboration between retailers, especially on the ORC side. But I think what Rich just explained, makes it even easier for them to do that and do it more efficiently versus trying to manually pull a bunch of information.
Yeah, absolutely. The more you can streamline it, the better. I know nobody wants to sift through hours of video and and try and connect all the dots halfway. That's old school, right? We need to get to
Right.
the new times. So I'm going to put you guys on the spot. Can you talk about a case that was like interesting or kind of cool that came to resolution? I would love to hear some real world examples. And again, I know you probably can't mention the names of the client, but I'd love to hear about a case.
I had a couple that I would love to throw out there at you. There's one recently with a world-class retailer, big footprint with Flock Safety, and they actually started tying some of their online fraud cases where people's identity had been stolen from the dark web.
Oh, okay.
Those people were sending runners into the store they made purchases with the credentials. They sent runners into the store to pick up the product. And backtracking through their losses that this retailer were taking on, they started looking at the transaction detail, and then they also plugged in Flock Safety, and they found out the license plates and the car descriptions, and they found out that these runners were all going back to a ring of people that were just a typical ORC case. It wasn't like some elaborate online scam from Russia or Iran or something. It was typical organized retail crime criminals that also had this as one of their avenues of stealing from retailers. And I thought that was a big lesson for me because I thought they were really using Flock in a way that maybe wasn't the first idea I had thought of when I was using Flock back in my old jobs. So I thought that was cool. The other one that I'm seeing that another retailer is using it for that they probably weren't real sure about when they bought Flock is anytime they have a risky incident, let's say they go to stop somebody and there's a gun pulled or a knife pulled, they're plugging those people in, and they're finding out that they've been doing that throughout the country, pulling weapons, and they're using it as a first line of defense against any type of unsafe event. And it's helping solve crimes that are really outside of, they're more important than just the shrink or the loss. These are people that are victimizing people all across the country. I thought those were good examples.
Absolutely. I mean, everybody has to get somewhere and they usually go in a car, right? So that to me as an investor, the first thing I'd look at is, do I have any Flock information to support my case?
Well, it's weird. The one incident, the person was pulling a box cutter every time they stole, and the current infrastructure of the case management system didn't tie these incidents together around the state, even though in the details they were using a box cutter. But because somebody investigated and used Flock, they tied that car to all these different incidents, and voila, you got the same person doing the same violent offense at all these stores. So it's kind of cool. They were able to wrap it up really quickly.
So that's what you're saying, and I'm going to interpret is Flock kind of picked up on something that maybe their internal case management system wasn't making the connection. Is that what you're
Yeah,
saying? Yeah.
yeah, it was easier to find the connection through Flock because it's one data point of this
Hmm.
car description and license plate than it was to try to connect the dots through intelligence through the case management system.
That's pretty amazing.
Yeah, I think to that point too, there's some good studies out there that show that about 70% of all crime is committed using a vehicle. And when you get to a retailer, that's a much higher number, right? Because the vast majority of people drive there. It's different in law enforcement when somebody burglarizes an apartment in their own complex and they just walked over and did it. But excuse me. But the vast majority of this is people that are driving over to commit these crimes and driving from one store to the next to commit the crimes at several different stores. And so, again, with the studies, about 5% or just under 5% of the cases that are being logged actually have license plate data tied to them. So we feel a huge gap there where the majority of your suspects are in a vehicle. Why wouldn't you retain that kind of information? And when you start plugging that in, that becomes a searchable data point within your records. And so it's let me search this car. Oh, he's 2 states over committing the exact same crime. I would have never known about this because it's such a distance between the two crimes.
Right. Yeah, again, amazing stuff. And I know that there are a lot of other, not a lot, but there are other folks kind of dipping the toe in the water of LPR right now, some other solution providers. What sets you guys apart? I know you've been in the game for a while now. Maybe that's one thing for sure. You've got that institutional knowledge, but anything else that sets your product apart?
Yeah, I mean, beyond the fact that we can quickly install, based on solar and cellular, we're not trying to trench power and data lines. On top of that, our software is really what truly sets us apart in a lot of ways. Some of the older, more traditional systems, they just don't pick up the vehicles the same way. They're not motion activated. I've used some in law enforcement that were great when they first came out. But when Flock came out, it really changed the name of the game, which is why Flock has grown so quickly and why we're now the largest in the country. I will say on the software side, with the camera being motion activated, it takes an image of what goes by, and then it kind of analyzes that image 2 different ways. It looks for a plate, and of course, if you know that your suspect is driving in a vehicle with 123 ABC as the license plate, you can quickly search that, and we'll give you the results for it. But more often than not, you start with the red Honda Accord, and so you go into our database, you select sedan, Honda, red, and sure enough, you'll find a handful of red Honda Accords that were in your parking lot during the time of the crime. And so we're not asking a third-party database like the DMV or Carfax what kind of plate that vehicle should be on. The software is actually figuring it out separately. And so when your suspect starts swapping tags back and forth between different vehicles, we don't miss them because it's the wrong tag on the wrong vehicle, or if it's a suspect that took the plate off, we still get the vehicle. And so in some of those cases, the suspect may stop a mile down the street, take the plate off, commit the crime, and then put it back on because they don't want to be stopped by law enforcement driving on normal streets without a license plate. And so, again, you get back to that network of cameras where you reach out to law enforcement and say, I saw the suspect turn onto the street. You've also got a Flock camera down the street. Can you look this up and see what the license plate was for this vehicle before they turned onto the property?
Does the system pick up on things like a back tail light is out or busted or a dent? Identifiers like that as well.
So nothing of that nature, but like a back rack or a top rack, and then bumper stickers, window stickers. You can also search for those,
Okay.
which obviously a lot of those stick out on surveillance pretty easily, and so being able to say maybe there's 8 different Honda Accords that came through, but I want to see the one that had this bumper sticker. That's pretty helpful.
Yeah, that's really cool. So I'm sure, like we talked about law enforcement a little bit. Can you guys, if I was a retailer who's interested in rolling this out as a new technology, what would be some of the first steps that I would take to make sure that I'm partnered with law enforcement and using the system to the best of its ability?
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, pretty much anytime that our cameras go up, we'll set up a training session. And so we'll sit down with your staff. If we need to do a pre-recorded video, we'll do it that way. If we need to come out 10 times, say you have shifts that work during the night, and we need to do a night shift and a day shift, we can do that. So whatever best fits you is what we'll do, but we'll do as many training sessions as we need to make everybody comfortable. The one great thing about Flock, and again, I use some other vendors, when I was in law enforcement. Flock is very easy to use. It is very simple, intuitive. There's not a lot of like crazy steps you have to take to search for a vehicle. It makes sense. A lot of people will start using it kind of if we put it up day one and then training is scheduled for day two. A lot of times we come in and they've already started using it, and they've already kind of started solving crimes and trying to find the vehicles in some of their case files. So it's a very simple program for sure.
So, Mike, I'm just curious, and I don't know if you can speak to this or not, but who is the folks within the LP team or the store team that are using it? Is it like the store manager that has access? Is it an in-store LP detective?
That's a really good question. Ultimately, what it seems like is happening is when it goes to get installed, it's a smaller group of corporate leaders, as well as maybe some organized retail crime teams around the country. And then over time, it's given access to the store level AP leaders. And ultimately, you could give access to a store manager, anybody you wanted. Many of the case examples I mentioned earlier, they were all reactionary investigative steps that we took. But this tool is really, really good to do it proactively. So to allow you to be alerted as soon as something bad happens coming in on the way in. If you already know someone's bad, you get alerted at the store level. So that's a whole nother business case that the retailers are fitting into their model right now.
Yeah, I'm just kind of wondering, when we talk about scenarios, I always think back to my days. It's like, okay, we got an alert coming in, then how does the store react to that? Or do they not react? I mean, it's just gathering evidence.
I think a lot of people are gathering evidence right now.
Okay.
And I think they'll be layering in who's going to react to it at the store level. I certainly think that's a whole nother layer of return on investment once you start doing that. Certainly for the safety incidents, if you've got a known unsafe ex-employee or customer that you've got labeled in the system that they've threatened someone with a gun before, or whatever the case may be, you'd want to be alerted that. Time saves lives. And to not do that, I think would be a mistake. And I think it'll be really beneficial in those situations.
Yeah, I think there's just so many cool tools coming down the pike, and you, like I said, you guys have been in the game for a while now. It's a super interesting tool, and I wish that I had this when I was an investigator. Man, my life would have been a lot easier for sure. And I know that like I said, the police that I talk to, they are demanding that retailers get better systems, that their cameras are better, that they get better information. So I really, we talk about the ORC puzzle. You guys are a big part of that puzzle. So it's just a super interesting product. We're going to kind of wrap it up here, but any last thoughts you guys have? Anything else you think our audience would want to hear?
I think one of the things we're most known for what we call the Falcon, which picks up license plates, but yeah, as a company, we offer several other things as well. We have a couple different live view cameras that can be installed. We have a device that picks up gunshots, and then we've got a platform. Essentially, if you were to build out like a GSOC or a war room, depending on whatever you call it, the kind of Jason Bourne scene of all the screens on the wall and all the technology coming in, we can pull in any live view video that you currently have. We can ingest that into that platform. And so when you start layering all those things on top of each other, and again, you've got the live video of the suspects committing the crime, and you pair that with a license plate reader, and then you pair that, if you were to have a violent incident that involved gunshot, you've got all the gunshot data that you need, and all that is in one platform, one pane of glass. That's quick to see. It's easy. Again, a very intuitive system. And so we're just trying to make things easier for everybody and kind of fill some of the voids and some of the issues that are going on with a technology system that is going to make things more efficient.
Yeah, excellent. I actually stopped by the booth for Fox Safety at the big show and looked at the gunshot detection. It's pretty interesting how the system learns. Has some AI there as well. So a lot of cool things in the hopper for you guys. It sounds like almost an all-in-one solution, which is fantastic.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay. Well, thank you guys so much for joining me today. I hope everybody in the audience learned a little bit about Fox Safety. If you want to reach out to Fox Safety, how can they get a hold of you guys?
Yeah, go to Google and search flock safety. We'll come right up.
Yep, Google is the go-to. So for sure, you can do that. Go to the website. I'm sure that we can get a hold of Rich and Mike on the website as well. So thank you again, guys, for joining. And if anybody has any questions, reach out to Flock. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.